Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Red and White Podcast. I'm your host, Evan, here with my co-host, Dustin. And this week we have a special guest joining us, the godfather of NC State podcasting, James Curle.
Hey, gentlemen. How are you? Thank you for having me on. I begged my way onto the show this week.
Well, we had an interesting conversation, so we wanted to have you on. I think that people will probably appreciate a different perspective. I need to first clarify my post-game tweet that got everybody's panties in a bunch this week. What I said was you don't get fired for losing to FSU. The rest of the games will tell the tale. Now, what I'm trying to say in 140 characters is that this game doesn't change anything. People kept referencing BC and ECU, and I get it. Those outcomes, they sucked. I know what happened there. I watched them. But losing to FSU has never gotten anybody fired who isn't named Larry Coker. I just need to clarify that because there's a lot of people misconstrued that I'm saying I want to keep him because he lost to FSU. That's not what I was saying. It's not by any chance what I meant. I'm just saying it doesn't change the fact. He missed an opportunity to help himself out. Absolutely. But he didn't do anything abnormally bad that would say, all right, enough is enough. This game was the straw back. So...
Well,
with that said,
I don't want to derail this on a tangent right before we even get going on the coaching stuff. But what do you think the perception would be if we had lost to ECU and BC but had beaten Clemson and Florida State? Like, would we have this really weird perception of Dorn as a head coach? Or would we feel better about him because he finally got those wins that he's been looking for but somehow lost two easily winnable games?
I think you'd be able to chalk those two games up to, a fluke, right? If you beat FSU and Clemson, you have a glimmer of hope to say, all right, things are kind of turning around. And that's what's been our argument we said last week, is that if you do that, you're showing progress. By not doing that, you're not showing any progress. And then you didn't do that. You also didn't beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And we've seen now that ECU is horrible this year. And BC is horrible. They've been horrible for the last couple of years. So that's where I think it kind of snowballs backwards. You beat those other two teams, you have a glimmer of hope. And right now I think everybody's saying, all right, at least what we're saying is logically it doesn't make any sense to keep him around because there's no progress being shown.
Yeah, the one feather in his cap has always been that he lost to the teams that he should lose to and he beat the teams that he should beat. And now he's losing that. So... yeah, that's regression for sure.
Triple threat right there. Double, whatever, but still, I think if I don't know, when you're a Florida State or an Alabama type program, when you beat ranked teams, it's expected. But when you lose those like ECU, BCU games, then there's a problem and you're fired. If your program's in a shape like ours, if you win a couple of those games against ranked teams, you get excuses for the other ones.
Right.
Like you're not expected to be world beaters. You're not expected to necessarily win conference titles, as bad as it hurts to say that. But Tom O'Brien beat Carolina every year, and it was a success. So if you knock off a Clemson and a Florida State in the same year, you can have a lot of bad that gets overlooked, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if he beats Clemson and Florida State and then loses to ECU and Boston College, then he is, in essence, just Tom O'Brien repackaged.
Yep.
So with that said, the FSU game, is anybody really surprised at the outcome? I'll leave that out there for you guys before I put my 2 cents in. James,
am I surprised that we lost? No. Am I hurt the way we lost? Yeah. I mean, Sean Boone dropping that interception in the end zone is going to haunt me probably just as much as the missed field goal against Clemson. I mean, that's, and I say that as a guy who, to this point has definitely been, maybe one of the last folks in the keep Dorn camp that, I'm just a 5-year guy. I believe in giving a guy 5 years. And I want Dorn to make it work, but you just can't drop an interception in the end zone late in the game that could possibly salt it away. and you can't miss field goals that would be winning kicks against Clemson. It's just I understand that the criticism of Doran seems to center on the fact that he's pointing fingers at other folks, and he is. But at the same time, I don't know how you represent what happened in Clemson or against Florida State without simply saying that guys had an opportunity to make a play and they didn't. I realize that comes off as finger pointing, but I don't know how. I guess I'm not sure what Doran can say at this point that will appease folks and say, okay, he's accepting responsibility the way he should. And that's a bad sign. If a coach really has nothing left to say that will appease the masses, then he's kind of burned through all of his get out of jail free cards, I guess.
Dustin, what do you think about that? Were you surprised?
Not really. Well, we talked at the tailgate that it's like, well, we're going to win. It's Florida State at night. And the thing is, we should have won. Pretty much dominated the whole game. But when it comes down to the end and a game that you've dominated and a couple of things go wrong to make you lose, I don't think the blame necessarily falls on one or two players. I think it's I don't want to go the Brian Kelly route, if you know what I mean. It's coaching. Coaching makes plays happen or not happen. I understand that he's not out there catching the ball, but preparation, practice. The buck stops here, right?
Well, can I be devil's advocate in that situation where,
please,
Sean Boone in that instance? That's as easy an potential interception as you'll ever have. It wasn't like it was a contested ball that he was fighting the Florida State guy for. It was just a horrible read by the quarterback. He underthrew it, and Boone was right there to make the play, and he just flat out dropped it. Is there anything that a coach can do practice-wise other than just preach the need and necessity for execution in those moments? And I'm not trying to, again, I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm not trying to come to Doran's defense necessarily, but, I feel like there are many, many instances that we can, nitpick over Doran's, whether it's his inability to prepare the team like they did against Louisville or the Boston College game. That's definitely on him. But I'm trying to think in those critical moments, like the field goal or like the dropped interception, is there anything that we as fans can imagine the coach could have done leading up to that could have, made the kick go through the uprights or have Boone catch an interception that hits him in both of his hands?
I don't think so. And I get what you're saying. I'm also going to say this. I believe you and we have always been, he needs his due time. So, we can repeat that over and over again. People are saying, I don't think we're being irrational when you say, should we replace him? So, we can justify that all we want. In that case, I don't think, and I feel terrible for Sean Boone, right? We've all been in a situation where you've choked when something was on the line, right? We've all done it, and it feels horrible. And I can imagine what Sean Boone feels like. I don't think you can coach anything differently to change that outcome. Maybe the kicking, maybe you can second guess. What I think is really the bigger problem is the red zone offense or lack thereof, right? Mm-hmm. Where's the Jalen McClendon package gone? Where's the Jalen Samuels package gone? Right, there's a lot of things in that game that FSU tried to give us that game. In the same way Clemson tried to give us that game, and we did not capitalize on it. And I think that comes back to coaching. So I don't put that on Sean Boone. And if Doran said, "Oh, he should have caught the ball," right? That's unfair because there's a lot of plays in that game that would have changed the outcome before that even happened. Now, is it, some BS that he dropped it? Yeah, it's not going to happen all the time. And I think 9 out of 10 times he's going to catch that ball. But it happened. There's a lot of other things that could have changed that outcome before. So I don't put that particular play on him. The outcome of the game, I think there's some other areas. I don't think it was a badly coached game. I just think it was a missed opportunity. I'm not really surprised. Dustin and I were talking the whole game. He's gonna win this game, right? He's gonna win it, and he's gonna save his job because, hey, look, I beat FSU. Here's my thing. But he didn't, and I think that was a completely blown opportunity on his part.
Yeah, I also was perplexed why we weren't running that J. Sam stretch play that he has scored so effortlessly and so many times, it feels like, over the course of his career. I mean, I realize Florida State has bigger, faster athletes, but, I still think he has an above-average chance of scoring in those situations when it's, it's goal to go and there's like 3 or so yards to go. I mean, run that play at least once. Let's see that and see, make Florida State beat that and show that we need to get more creative or find a different way, because it's been so effective for us with him over the years. I just don't know why you don't at least try it once. So.
And they haven't tried it in the last couple of games, and everybody's been screaming it. Where is Jalen Samuels? It's your goal line play. It's your best player. He gets in the end zone like every third time he touches the ball. It's absurd.
Yeah,
get him the ball in the red zone.
I think stuff like that. I mean, like I have tried to see other instances that support Dan Walken's report that there's strife in the locker room, like reports from other reporters that have heard things or whatnot. And, I don't want to necessarily believe that it's true, but, that maybe is an instance of something that might lead you to believe that if players are suddenly not getting touches that normally would have in certain situations, I don't know. Maybe we'll learn once all the dust settles that there was some sort of split or strife in the locker room, and I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a good story about this coaching tenure when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we talked about it last week. It might have been Dustin and I talking. I can't remember. That it's the same point at this time last year when the offense under Canada took a weird turn. And that kind of brings me back, like, is there a common denominator there? Is Doran maybe exercising more control than he needs to be? Because we're not going up tempo like they talked about all year, and we showed in the first game. And you get away from giving the ball to some of your best players. And so it just brings up a lot of questions there. So I can understand people's angst in that regards.
Well, and 2 years ago, didn't we see that defensively the team took on a much different identity towards the end of that season,
right?
Which led us to believe that maybe he was stepping in to change things up midstream. I don't know. Maybe that's Doran's MO, is that when things aren't working right, he decides to take it upon himself. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like that's a little bit of learning on the job. And you're right. We'll hear that whenever this tenure is over. With that said, what happens next, right? If we get into the common question is, who's going to replace Dave Doran, right? And Dustin, I'll let you go. And we've talked a little bit about this. The first one on the list, probably for most everybody, is Les Miles. Would Les Miles come to NC State?
Yeah. Are you asking me or are you asking Dustin?
I'm asking Dustin. This is his bread and butter here.
Yes, he would come. This is the prime type of job for him. This is what he's gonna. Yeah. He's not gonna get another, one of those top tier jobs. He's gonna get a P5 job, where, there's not huge expectation, but that he can come in and make better. To end his career, kind of thing. I mean, he's going to go out on a winning note, and this is the perfect kind of spot for him. And I think we would pay him.
I agree. I think the common thread that people say is that it's a pipe dream, but I think it's not a pipe dream. I think this is probably one of the better jobs that, if open, could be open this season. And I think he recognizes that. If he's worried about his son, who's the 4th-string quarterback at Carolina, I don't know if that's going to make his decision for him. I think the situation here sets up pretty nicely for him. James, what's your side of that one?
Well, I'm not a stockbroker by any means, but it less to me would feel like buying a stock, maybe like Yahoo stock at the height of their price point right before everything kind of collapsed and everything went under. Les certainly has a brand. I feel like we would be bidding for him at a time where his market price, if you will, would be very high. He's just coming off of a very notable stint at LSU. And this is just my personal opinion, I feel like he is a guy who, relied heavily on high levels of, SEC type talent to run a more traditional, like a pro style offense that, given the kind of talent he would most likely get at NC State, I don't know that he would be able to succeed with. Now, I know, Dustin, you said and linked an SB Nation post to me that said he was studying some of the newer offenses like Baylor and Western Michigan and whatnot, and that he would be willing to, explore changing some of his offensive philosophies, and that's great. But at his age and as entrenched as he is in coaching football the way that he has coached it to this point, it just does not seem like something that he would be able to do easily and readily, or willingly necessarily. If he came in and said, "Oh yeah, I'm planning to run a Baylor type offense and get creative," I don't know. I'm very skeptical. Part of the skepticism is just being an NC State fan, so that's kind of my default position anyway. But I just feel like he's a guy at this point in his coaching career that has a way and a method of doing things, and that has relied heavily on, not huge, but the type of lineman at LSU that could create the type of running lanes and holes that he wanted to, create for guys like Leonard Fournette. Big backs, strong backs that rely on, a strong running game without a whole lot of misdirection. I just don't know that would necessarily work here. We all, I think, agree that running the football is key. I just think at an NC State, the type of offense that we're running now actually seems to, when it's not brain dead, it seems to work. There's ways that we have seen this offense be able to run the ball effectively against teams with better talent, better defensive talent. Getting creative. I actually kind of like the idea of a spread running attack. That to me seems intriguing. I don't know. I'm skeptical that I could see Les Miles changing his stripes, no pun intended, and running a different style of offense here at NC State. I have no doubts that he would definitely improve the defense here at NC State, but I don't know. I think we would find ourselves in a similar boat to where LSU is or was before they fired him, which is, a solid defense that's struggling to put points on the board. And, I don't know. I have my doubts that he could succeed at NC State.
Well, go ahead, Dustin.
That was James.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. The final point on that was going to be to the level that we would be satisfied with given the amount that we would have to pay him. I think that's the other part of it, too, is how much would you have to pay him to get him to come to NC State? And if we're offering $3, $4, maybe even $5 million a year for Les Miles, are we going to get the kind of production out of him that we would expect at that price point?
So working backwards in your statement, I think we're somewhere around $3.5 million, and I think that's pretty reasonable, considering he's still getting something like 10 or 9 a year from LSU, and then you subtract whatever he gets paid in his future gig, he'd still be making somewhere close to 9 or 10 million a year, no matter what job he takes. So I'm not concerned necessarily with the money. The ROI is always in question. My thing is, and this might be where Dustin's coming from, is right. He's pro style type guy, and I agree. I don't know how often guys change, but one of the common threads we always heard with Tom O'Brien was, man, if he could only recruit, right, because he can coach. And I think Les Miles is kind of a little bit of in between there. I think he can recruit better than Tom O'Brien for sure. And does he have the fundamentals to coach the same? I think he's shown he probably does. So I'm wondering if, maybe it's not such a bad thing, right? You recruit a higher level, you coach the right way. And I don't know. I think there might be something there. Dustin, what you got?
Okay, so as far as him, being set in his ways and not changing, he got fired. And if you've ever been fired, you realize that you've got to change. Something went terribly wrong, and if you don't want that to happen again, you have to fix it. So I think he'd be more than willing to adapt, and I think he's really taking steps for that. He knows what happened there, and he knows that that can't happen again, kind of thing. As far as the money, and is it worth it? I like numbers. So looking at numbers, I'm looking from 1990 on. Oklahoma State hired him in 2001. From 1990 to 2000, they had one winning season. His first year, they went 4-7. He was there 3 more years, winning records every year. But after that, just having him there, a name matters. They've had one losing season since he left. So they were a perennial bottom dweller. He comes in, that program gets credibility. So I realize he's older. His name would carry weight for the next coach that we would hire after him. I would think it's like a long-term investment kind of thing.
Well, I certainly don't have any doubts that he could recruit probably at a higher level than Dorn, just because of that brand. Les is his own brand at this point. Everybody wants a piece of the Mad Hatter, and I'm sure they envisioned being able to replicate the kind of success that he had at LSU, and we know he's got a great personality. I think personality-wise, he'd be a great fit at NC State, man. If he did the barbecue circuit here in North Carolina, man, we would eat it up. There's no doubt about it. I just feel like, and so much of my skepticism is basically just the offensive side of the ball. If he wants to run a pro style, he's going to need big, talented offensive linemen. And as we've seen, not just in college, but in the NFL, those guys are in very short supply. I don't know that you'll find anybody, in the quantities that we would need in North Carolina that could fit that bill. So he'd most likely have to recruit some areas that he did when he was there at LSU. And, you can make an argument that bringing him in with those established connections opens up some of that recruiting territory. I don't know. Again, my default position is skepticism. So
yeah, and that's natural for a State fan, right? And I've always been the champion of State's got to win with scheme, because given the level of talent, you're not gonna out talent anybody, right? Dorn showed that. He's already escalated our level of talent, right? That's not you can't argue that. It's gotten better. His recruiting classes numbers have been better than Tom O'Brien's have ever been, and it's closer to the Chuck Amato years. But you can't win with talent, and we need somebody who can coach it up. You can get the talent here, right? And this is a winning job. We've heard from national guests all over the place that say, hey, this is a good job, right? You can win here. So maybe Les Miles gets the talent, and maybe the scheme is not as big of a deal. I don't know. I don't know how much he's willing to change. It's kind of a hard thing to judge. I think it comes down to the experience of being able to hire a better staff and to hire the schemes around you. Because the 2 points I have about Dave Dorn is that I think he's gonna go down, and it's gonna be based on his first 2 assistant hires. I think Huxtable was not a very good hire. Matt Canada was a questionable hire. We can go into that another time. But I would imagine Les Miles would have opportunity to bring in better coaches because of his name, but also bring in any coach he wants, like any of the kind of the style coach he wants to fit what he wants to do. And go ahead.
Here's one thing I don't know about Les, and I probably should have researched him a little bit more before this conversation, but is his background on the defense or the offensive side of the ball?
I believe he's defensive.
Okay. So he'd be more inclined to hand the keys over to an offensive coordinator anyway, more than likely.
Yes, and if you want to make that argument, you can say he's hired questionable offensive coordinators at LSU, Cameron, and et cetera. But if he's like legit, he's out there willing to learn and adjust, then even with that one red flag, I'm willing to take a chance. Unless you can get, the only other person I would argue would be on that level would be Charlie Strong when he gets fired from Texas, because that's going to happen.
Well, that kind of leads to one of my hesitancies about trying to make a move at this time, beyond just the simple fact that I'm a 5-year guy, is the fact that this is going to be a very, very busy hiring and firing offseason, it seems. Most likely Texas is going to be looking for a guy. There's a good chance that some other, key high-profile jobs. I mean, LSU, I know that Orgeron is trying to make his case for keeping the job, but more than likely they're probably going to go a different route. And I don't know that I necessarily want to pursue Orgeron. There's guys like Herman that are going to be in high demand. Who's the guy at Western Michigan? Is that PJ Fleck?
PJ Fleck, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I was thinking of, well, who do you get if it's not Les? I mean, he's a guy that I would be looking at. But if you've got other high-profile jobs that are going to be open, you're in a bidding war with some pretty big names. I mean, you're never going to be able to outspend Texas. And a lot of the other,
So here's the thing. Okay. Let me cut you off here. I know what you're saying. And we talked about this before, there's a lot of jobs that could be open. But if you look at, 3 weeks ago, that number's come down a lot. We've talked about it last week that Malzahn saved his job. Clay Helton potentially saved his job at USC. And now you're talking about Texas, LSU, and Baylor, right? Those are the big three that are open right now. We're not competing with those guys anyway. If they want Tom Herman, they're going to have Tom Herman. He's not going to pick NC State over us. So we're in a different tier. And, in that tier, the only open job at the moment is Purdue. And I'm pretty sure that anybody, unless they have a Midwest connection, is going to pick us over Purdue. It's just a better opportunity.
See, that's the problem there. Les is from Ohio.
Right. So... But, we get into PJ Fleck, and I love the guy. I think he would be a great hire. He's not big enough for Texas, LSU, or Baylor. They're going to go after a Fedora or somebody who's won at a bigger name program. So while we're not in that same category, they're also not fishing in our pool. And the concern people have with Fleck, and this is getting way off on a tangent, is that he's another MAC guy like Dave Dorn. But my argument is that PJ Fleck's built Western Michigan from nothing. I mean, they were awful into undefeated right now, right? And he's just constantly whipping people in his conference. Dave Dorn took in Jerry Kill's players and maintained what he had, right? He maintained what NIU already had going. So I can make that argument right there too. But I think our pool is just going to be substantially different. If Charlie Strong gets fired from Texas, he's not going back to LSU. He's not going to an LSU or to a Baylor. Right, he's coming down to our pool. Les Miles got fired out of that pool. He's coming down to our pool. So I think there's an opportunity there. But this leads into the last question before I think you're probably running short on time is NIT Stan tweeted at us. It says, do you think there's any realistic prospect that Dave Dorn gets the axe after this season? What do you think?
Well, I was just going to say, I just had a nightmare vision of us going in a head-to-head coaching search hire against UNC trying to replace Larry Fedora. Oh, God. Right.
Yes, that would be awful.
Yeah, they'd come home with the prom queen, and we would be left with something other than that. Not to go off on tangents, but State obviously is in this weird window of time where, you can probably justify making a change now or making a change when Debbie plans to retire after 2018. But would you make a change after year 5 when she's, 1 year away from retiring? That's probably a completely different conversation for a different time. So I don't know. The timing might be more ideal to make a change now versus after year 5. But anyway, I'm sorry, I completely forgot the question. What was your question for me?
Does Dave Dorn get canned after the season, basically?
Oh, well, based on what I just said, I think his chances of getting canned this year are pretty slim. Probably more likely than after next year. Even though, since I'm a 5-year guy, I would be more inclined to make a change after next year. I think he's either gone after this year or after year 6 when we have a new athletic director in place, presuming that we do at that time. And that's a whole another ball of wax on how that transition is going to go with who does Woodson get. I saw the debate raised of, well, if Debbie's already announced that she's going to be kind of a lame duck AD from here until her contract runs out in 2018, why not make a change there now anyway? I mean, because you've essentially hamstrung yourself at this point into waiting until that change occurs. So I don't know. The short answer is no, I don't see us making a change, but just for the reasons I mentioned about the fact that you've got some other players. I know you addressed that the pool is smaller than it used to be, but I don't know. I don't see it happening. I'm hoping that it doesn't happen just because I think it could be a pretty crazy off season. And as we've seen, not even waiting until the off season, and moves are already starting to be made. So throwing ourselves into that mix would be pretty tricky.
Dustin, what do you think? Does Dave Dorn get canned?
No. The opportunity for that to happen was after the BC game.
Yeah.
I think now it would have to be lose every game here on out, and I say we get one of those. So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, the fear is that, you win one and you miss the bowl this year, and then next year he wins 7 games, and then what do you do? I don't know. I think we're in a tough spot.
Yeah, so what I would do right now is I would call for Debbie Yow to clarify her position, because we've heard 2019, we've heard 2018, we've heard after this year. Hey, let us know what's going on, or let somebody know what's going on, because I think that's an issue. And the only way you do kind of overcome that is you hire a name that transcends both athletic directors. Les Miles, Charlie Strong would do something like that, right? You can't. A new AD is not going to come in and say, well, Les Miles, he's not my guy, right? He's everybody's guy. Everybody loves him. So that's the only way you kind of avoid that way. She needs to clarify what's going on. I think people would appreciate that, no matter what when she's going to step down. I don't want that to be a reason to hold back our biggest revenue generating sport, or maybe basketball is, but one of the largest revenue generating sports, right? I think it puts you in a bad situation. Now, I fully expect us to beat Syracuse. We'll probably be favored in that game for some reason, but they are playing better, so it makes it tough. And then, Miami's a toss-up, Carolina's a toss-up because it's a Carolina game, but I agree with Dustin. Your chance was after the BC game. I don't know if there's any benefit to doing it then, or if you wait for whatever reason. I don't know. But I think the outcome is if he loses the next 3, he might be gone after the Syracuse game, right? We've heard the rumors he was already in trouble if he lost to Wake Forest. Syracuse is not much better than Wake Forest, and they're probably the same as BC, and he already lost to BC. So I don't think anybody really knows. I would hope that it's not a reason to keep him because she's retiring at some point, right? I don't want to do a coaching search, or Debbie doesn't want to do a coaching search, is the common thread that you hear. I don't think that's a very good reason. I don't think that's a legitimate reason either.
Well, I think Syracuse is probably better than we're giving them credit for, and it's on the road. So we could win all 3 and we could lose all 3 pretty easily.
Right.
Yeah, it's a tough spot because I think, if there's any way that Debbie could clarify her position on when exactly her contract ends and when she plans to retire, that would help at least give all of us a clearer picture on where things stand. Maybe she hasn't clarified, or maybe she's been asked not to clarify for the very reason of we don't want to show all our cards. I don't know. But I think if you're in a position of replacing an AD ahead of schedule, then how long does that process take? 2 months, maybe a month and a half if you're lucky, and then that puts you 2 months behind schedule with the football hire if there's one to be made. I don't know. This is a tough spot. I mean, even if you'd fired him after the BC game, justified though it may have been, you're still kind of in a wait and see mode for how some of the other bigger names at the table get filled, or if they decide to make a change before some of the guys that you might have on your radar, like a PJ Fleck, decide where they want to go or what they want to do. So accelerating the timetable may not have actually been of any benefit.
Right.
I don't know.
That's what Scott Russell said when he was on here. He joined us and said, there's no benefit doing now, because if you're having that conversation, you're still having that conversation. Whether you have a coach or not, your agents are talking and the back channels are already working. So we don't know. We don't know what's going on. I don't know if there's any benefit to it, other than I just don't know if there's any benefit to it. Right? If you're going to get started, you're already getting started.
I guess my hope would be that even though Debbie does plan to retire shortly, I would hope that she has done all of the traditional legwork that is asked of an AD to do, even though she has plans to leave. I wouldn't want, and I don't think that she's the type to, be in this position anyway. I think she probably has a list and is asking those questions. Because I think, unlike at Maryland, I think she does have enough of a connection to NC State where she does want to see the school prosper even after her time here.
Right.
So even if she, doesn't plan to be here after 2018 or 2019, she would be invested enough to try to make a solid hire for our benefit, just so that she could see the university do well after her time. And, from a legacy standpoint, it certainly would benefit her if she hired a name that any AD would be happy to have as their football coach.
I agree with you. I think everybody wants to go out on top. Everybody wants to go out leaving an impression. And she's not going to go out lame duck style. That's not her style. That's not what's going to happen. She's going to do everything she can. I like to believe that she's going to do everything she can to not leave us in a worse position we started. My concern with next year and letting him stay is what's shared between one of your former co-hosts, Matt Purdy, and he said it the other day that next year's team is going to be seniors, they're going to be talented, and it could be lost with average coaching. Right, that's your opportunity, and if that happens, if he comes back next year and he goes 7-5, 4-4, or whatever, and you go right back into this vicious cycle, because then you have to have someone come in and rebuild it back up, and then kind of reestablish your name and kind of sell it all over again. So I just think it makes it very, very difficult if you're not proactive at some point. And I think NC State has never been proactive, and that's been a concern. I think at some point in our lifetime, I'd like to see us be proactive. I think now's a good time to start. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, I mean, as we kind of started the show off, we are a missed field goal and perhaps an intercepted ball in the end zone away from being 6-3 with two bizarre fluky losses. And, with a team of seniors, maybe those fluky losses also disappear off the schedule.
Right.
I mean, we're not, again, I feel like I'm kind of painting myself as the, excuse maker for Dorn here. But I do feel like this team is close enough to where you can make those arguments and say, we didn't execute in certain situations, but we're close. And close ultimately won't keep your job. But if you're close this year and you've got a more senior-laden team next year, maybe those close games turn for you. And I mean, who knows? 5 years from now, we could be talking about how close we were to getting rid of one of the best coaches in NC State history. I don't know. But it's going to be real interesting if we lose these next three, because then you're talking about people pulling their season ticket money or not showing up to games at all. And when you start hitting the administration in the pocketbook, that's when things get, things start to change pretty drastically.
You're right. The apathy has set in. It's if we lose, Syracuse, there might be nobody at the Miami game other than the 10 of us in our group frying a turkey, and that's why we're all going. I just don't, and that's, you can kind of have the same feel. Dustin said it last week. It feels like the Tom O'Brien UVA year, that game. And
Well,
You know,
it could
I don't
very
know.
well feel like Amato's final year, where there were more ECU fans in the stands than there were state fans. And,
Right.
I'm not saying that there's going to be more Miami fans in Carter Finley, because they can't even put more
Right.
Miami fans in their stadium.
Yeah.
But, if it's, struggling to get half full and people leave at halftime, and it's, there's, 10,000 people left in the stands after half or before losing, that's a real tough image for an AD to shake, whether, she decides to stick around for the long haul or not.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, with that said, we're going to talk Syracuse. I don't know if you have time. Want to stick around. It'll probably be pretty brief.
Yeah, I got a few more minutes.
All right. Well, this week we're going to Syracuse, right? We've touched on it a little bit. They're trending upward, although they did get trounced by Clemson 54-0. I think everybody kind of fully expected that. But they have won some games. They beat Virginia Tech. Their offense is clicking. Dino Babers is an excellent coach. I'm not confident either way. I don't know if the line's out yet. I don't think so. But they're trending upward, and playing at their place is not going to be an easy game. I don't know if their starting quarterback is back yet. How you guys feel about this game?
Yeah, well, first of all, I watched the video, like I think a lot of people did, of Babers after that Virginia Tech win. And I was like, man, how do you not want to play for that guy? I mean, that dude just, when he was yelling, "It's not their fault," I was like, oh, God, this is like the Good Will Hunting speech. The locker room was lit, as the kids like to say. So yeah, I think Syracuse is definitely trending upward, which obviously only makes our job more difficult in the Atlantic, the dreaded Atlantic. And Clawson's finally got Wake Forest bowl eligible, so good Lord, next year could be rough. But anyway. We beat them 2 years ago up there when I guess McKeever had an interception pick for a touchdown. We seem to do fluky things up there that get us the win late in games. So, I'm going to be inclined to say that something weird is going to happen and we'll win that game as well.
Dustin, what you got?
I mean, we're at a spot now where for me to expect a win, they've got to show that they can win a game again. I mean, I know there's been, a couple of tight ones and then the blowout, but if you look at those last 4 games, those are, you don't think of Clemson as winnable, but we should have won it. Probably should have beat BC, should have beat Florida State. Got blown out at Louisville, fine. But if you can't win those close games, then I can't expect you to go on the road and win. So I don't want to pick Syracuse, but I mean, that's where my head's at.
It feels like that too. I just looked it up while you guys were talking that Dungy has not been ruled out yet. Most people think he won't actually play the rest of the year. They said it was that bad. I don't know, the ins and outs of it, but they have a freshman, Austin Wilson, or a junior, Zach Mahoney, who's been playing before. They played Wilson when Dungy went out in this last game, so anything can happen. They have some good players. They have a really good system. It's that Baylor system we talked about. The people who know that Baylor system, I think they're few and far between, and it's really good. So it kind of worries me. I think if it worries Bud Foster, it's going to worry Dave Huxtable too. Yeah. So, yeah, I think before the season we looked at this game and it was a win. We all chalked it up like, all right, going to Q's, we're better than them. Let's wrap this one up. Move on to the next game. I think now 50-50 at best. I don't know. I'm just not confident.
Yeah, it's so weird to think about preseason expectations relative to how the season has played out. I remember you asking me in the parking lot that one day before, I guess, one of our, what was it, the ODU game maybe? And yeah, none of that has played out like we anticipated. But, that's normally how it goes. People who get paid to do this kind of stuff for a living are really wrong about it as well.
Yes, especially for NC State.
Yeah, it'll be. I'm not confident enough to where I would bet one of my kids on it. And I've got 3, so I got something.
You got one to spare, yeah.
Well, I don't know. Like I think we're all in the same place here. I don't think any of us wanted to fire Dave Dorn. I think we're all kind of pulling for him. We've all been, 5-year guys. The guy needs his time. I don't think there's a whole lot of evidence supporting him. So that's kind of where we're at. If you look at Syracuse and like James, like you said, Wake Forest, they're both trending upwards. Wake Forest is in the top 10 of pretty much every defensive category. You're like, Wake Forest? I know their schedule's soft or whatever, but they are playing well, and he's a good football coach. There's a reason that people are talking about him replacing Brian Kelly at Notre Dame when he eventually gets fired. I don't know if it'll be whenever that'll happen. They just lost to Navy, so it might be tomorrow. But, yeah, you never know. But those teams are trending upwards, and I think that's where we're struggling, right? I think that's where all state fans are kind of feeling we're not sure. Well, we don't know what to expect. We don't know which team's going to show up, if they are, which coaches are going to show up. I think there's a lot of unknowns. So, yeah, we'll find out 12:30 on Saturday.
I think we win one of these next 2 games with bowl eligibility on the line against Carolina, and then all holy hell breaks loose in some kind of weird 2-yard Hail Mary type deal, or punt to Geo. So it could go either way.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. They're looking a little bit better than I expected them to, but I don't know. Maybe that's just the schedule and their offense and all sorts of things. I don't know.
Maybe if they beat us, then Fedora gets hired elsewhere, and we don't have to deal with them anymore.
It's a win in the end, right?
Yeah.
We've been saying it all year. I think he's gone somewhere. I think he's been wanting out of there. Kind of a toxic situation. He's done what he could. Put him at Baylor. I think he would do pretty well at Baylor or at LSU or Florida State when they take Jimbo, which would be awful for us. Actually, that would be even worse. But that's all I got. You guys want to add anything else? I'll let James go before so he can get back to work.
One thing to close it out on before we get called out. We were wrong. Les Miles is an offensive guy.
Oh, okay.
Which you could look at one of 2 ways. One, well, if he's an offensive guy and that's why he got fired, that's not good. I want to choose to look at it as their defense was stellar, so he was making great hires on that side of the ball. And if he knows he needs to change the offense, then why can't he make great hires on that side too?
Yeah.
Well, that reinforces my point that he's an old dog who won't learn any new tricks, and he'll try to force feed a pro-style offense at NC State with an offensive line that can't get it done.
I think he hires a new coordinator that just. I think he might even hand the reins over for play calling.
I'd take him for press conferences alone.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, James, thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening, everybody. Go Pack.
Go Pack.
This is Kodiak calling in with a 100% guaranteed NC State prediction versus Syracuse this Saturday. The Cuse is playing well right now, but they are reeling after an extremely close loss to Clemson last week. They were just 1 or 2 key plays from scoring more than 0 points. Back to the matter at hand, Syracuse versus NC State. One thing for sure, this will not be a well-played game between 2 good teams. It's a battle of 2 4 and 5 teams that need a win to be bowl eligible. I believe it will come down to a field goal, and we all know how the State fans feel about them tricky 3-pointers. The Cuse wins a barn burner, 27-24. Kodiak out.
Hey, this is Josh in Raleigh. It's not much to brag about for this Syracuse season. They're never really good enough to be in the good old days, but one thing we can count on is that we aren't as sad as NC State. Sorry, Wolfpack fans. Things are pretty bad in Syracuse, but they're not like they are in Raleigh. Good luck this weekend.